Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. I'm really excited to be joined once again by Aaron, the Cricket Connoisseur. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing well, to be honest. I'm really well. It's been a very, very good weekend. For those who don't know, I'm a massive county cricket fan and an IPL fan, and RCB won. And then Warwickshire, for the first time in 577 days, finally won a game of red ball cricket. And we won it with 10 men, basically. Dom Sibley injured his finger on day one. So we're basically batting with a wicket down. And they somehow won. Tim Bresnan is an absolute hero here in Warwickshire for that. And yeah, pretty good weekend, to be honest, Faizan. I can't lie. Been very, very good. Weather's been absolutely gorgeous. Played a little bit of cricket as well down the nets. Always fun to get back. I mean, after the year that we had in 2020, I think we're all grateful to be back down the nets and having some sort of normality this year. But yeah, overall, can't complain. And yeah, feeling quite happy and quite chuffed that cricket season is back in full flow.
Yeah, 100%. As you said, there's a lot of cricket going on. Wasn't as good for us guys here in Surrey, obviously not getting the win, but Ollie Pope with a nice 200, which I'm sure he'll be happy about.
Gorgeous batting as well.
Yeah,
some of the shots.
He's great to watch, isn't he? He's I'll whisper it, but Ian Bell-esque. I'll whisper it very quietly. Maybe one day. But yeah, Ian Bell, who I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Incredibly, yep.
yeah, but Bresden, yeah, fantastic, not from him. And as you know, and as the subscribers, and I don't follow I don't watch the IPL, but I do. Obviously, I know what's going on, so I know RCB are doing pretty well. I think Glenn Maxwell's blasting it, isn't he, around, and AB de Villiers. So that's only good for you because I know you're an RCB fan as well. So good stuff. And looks like I think it's what them, Delhi Capitals, and Mumbai Indians. I think are probably looking the strongest, aren't they? So yeah. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Cool. Well, enough of that. We should be talking about. We are going to talk about the Pakistan vs South Africa T20 series, a 4-match series. Myself and Aaron are just going to go through. I mean, Pakistan came out on top, came up trumps 3-1, but there's actually quite a bit to talk about. Some very close matches, two which actually were decided on the last ball, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Pakistan, of course, making it half of themselves as always, and. Yeah, I don't know why I'm surprised, to be honest with you. Because Pakistan won, I'm going to touch upon Pakistan first. So I'm going to chuck a really hard question to you to start off with, just because I think it's really good to do so, just to, get us into a little debate. Is Pakistan, there was this big question mark around, Shajil Khan was in the squad. He played quite well in the PSL, and, he's a big hitter. And people saying this is what we need. Babar Azam go down to 3, have Rizwan opening, who we know is now a good opener. You should have Rizwan, Shajil Khan, and then Babar Azam at 3. Fakhar Zaman, though, did very well in the ODI series, as we know, back-to-back hundreds. So they included him in the T20 squad, and they repaid, I guess, the form that Fakhar Zaman showed in the ODI stuff, and said, look, we're going to back you. Here we go, have a chance at the T20s, and he did pretty well as well. So I'm thinking, and from the looks of it, it looks like Pakistan are going to shape up with Babar Rizwan and Fakhar Zaman. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that as more of a neutral point of view as well. What do you think of that combination, and do you agree with it?
I quite like it. I'm going to be honest, I really do like it. Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan just ooze class. It's as simple as that, and I know we'll talk about their performances throughout this series as the show goes on. But I do quite like the dynamic between those two, because yes, they aren't the powerful hitters that Shahid Khan is, for example, but they really know how to build an innings. They can lay a solid foundation for Pakistan. So to be honest, I think the openers, I quite like them. I like the dynamic between those two. Yes, in certain situations, the strike rate has been questioned, but you can't say that about this series. Both of them were absolutely exceptional up the top of the order. And then Fakhar Zaman at 3 is interesting because I personally see him as an opening batsman. I do quite like sometimes in T20 cricket that left-hand, right-hand combination. But having Fakhar at 3, an experienced, cool figurehead, someone who actually can accelerate an innings as it progresses, again, I quite like the dynamic. It's as simple as that, and it's clearly worked. It worked in this series. I thought those 3 obviously scored the bulk of the runs, and they looked really, really dangerous. So if it was me personally, and I say this as a neutral fan, I would keep that dynamic. Let's see how it shapes up. Of course, got the Zimbabwe series, which is this week. Cannot wait for that. Should be interesting. Some interesting selections from the Chevrons as well. The series hosts in this particular series. But yeah, I would keep those the same. And with regards to Pakistan, I don't think the issue is the top order at all. I think it's the middle order. They need to find people who can complement and supplement that batting lineup to best get the big scores. out of this team. So I feel like for the time being, top order, absolutely fine. Middle order, around 5 and 6 in particular, they're the positions which I think Pakistan probably need to look at in a bit more focus and more detail heading into the next bilateral series and, of course, heading into the T20 World Cup later this year in India.
I agree 100%. I think we'll touch upon that middle order aspect because I think there's quite a bit to talk about there for sure about the combination, who's supposed to come in. To be honest with you, I have no idea. If I'm being perfectly honest with you,
not many people do.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. Normally, I can talk for days and I seem to pretend to have all the answers, but this one I can tell you pretty certainly I don't really know. But yeah, the opening partnership, and I was very surprised, a little bit like yourself, that Pak Takeaways was at 3 because, as you said, he's an opening batsman, really. And maybe it just has put a little bit less pressure on him that, you know, coming in at 3, he doesn't necessarily have to go huge early doors of the power play. And I thought the most impressive thing for me about Babar Azam and Rizwan, I think it really was epitomized in that 197 first wickets record partnership between two Pakistani batsmen in a T20, is the running between the wickets. And not something that you always associate with Pakistani batsmen, to be honest with you. And I think, to be honest with you, no offense to Shahjeel Khan, but I think he's one that is, I'm going to hit boundaries, and really quick running isn't really in his DNA. And he's one of those, as you said, power hitters. But Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan, they seem to have these different gears. And something that I thought was amazing, and I thought, again, it really epitomized I think the difference for sure for me between a world-class player, or sorry, a good player, let's say, and a world-class player is that difference in running between the wickets, because anyone can hit balls for 4s and 6s at this level, at international level, anyone can do that. But can you manipulate a field? Can you hit gaps? And can you make sure that you can rotate the strike, make it hard for the bowlers and make them have to constantly adjust, you know, to have to think, oh, hold on, I've just put a fielder there. Now they've hit it. Now they've hit it past that man. Okay, drop down. Okay, you come up. Next thing you know, I'll fall there. Okay, great. You know, and it's clever cricket, I think. And these two definitely seem to have that type of cricketing IQ needed. And, you know, there was one over, I think it was from from Shamsi even, Tabraiz Shamsi even. And I was about to say Mohammad Shami from Tabraiz Shamsi. And he came on for his first over and he went for 9 runs. And normally you think 9 runs, okay, there must be a boundary in there, right? A 4 in there. It wasn't. It was just 2s and singles from Babar Azam and Rizwan to the number 1 T20 bowler ranked at the moment anyway in T20 internationals, who's very dangerous. And they just hit him for 9 off the first over. And I thought, to me, that was really impressive, and it showed a level of maturity from these two, and also maybe an understanding and dynamic. I don't want to say that they're as good as like a David Warner and Finch, but what I would say is that, you know, those two have an understanding that, you know, we can score boundaries, but also the running between the wickets, we're quick between the wickets, we're going to back ourselves to do that. And we know even if we don't hit a boundary, we're going to be able to manipulate the field and keep the scoreboard ticking. I think those two have it for sure. Where was I going? I just wanted to talk about Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan, to be honest with you. But do you think then, for Shahjeel Khan on the outskirts, I mean, I'm assuming he'll probably be in the squad come the T20 World Cup, but he's probably not going to be in that 11. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think for the time being, as I said, because that Pakistani top order, I'm going to be honest, is pretty set. I think that is the strength of the team. That and the bowling, of course. As I said, the middle order is almost the perceived weakness of this team. So yes, for some people who are Shahjeel fans, we all know what he's capable of. We've seen him smash 4s and 6s for fun across multiple Pakistan Super League seasons. But at the moment, you've got Babar Azam, and we could wax lyrical about Babar Azam and the imperious and glorious, majestic, elegant nature of his batting for days on end. I know I certainly could, Faiz, and I reckon you could as well, and many Pakistan fans across the globe could. And then Rizwan, the reinvention of Mohammad Rizwan's game is just so full of class, so much composure, so much assurance in the crease. So for me personally, unless there's an injury, of course, which who knows, cricket's a funny game, I don't think Shahjeel will be the first name on that team sheet, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I won't talk too much about Babar Azam and how classy he is, because I think I'll bore people. But he scored a fantastic 100, I think, after that. A lot of criticism for hitting a runnable 50 in that was a second T20 where, I mean, look, it happens. His timing wasn't there. And I think we were 10 for 2 at one point. Mohammad Rizwan got out first ball trying to hit Lind over mid-off and got it horribly wrong. And it's funny because you talk about Mohammad Rizwan and he was very consistent, but not in the way that you might think, because I think he went 70-0-70-0 so throughout this series, which is pretty funny, to be honest with you, for me, because I was just thinking, oh no, because in that second T20 when he got out first ball, I thought we're going to lose this, and we did. Went on to lose it, but luckily in the fourth ball we managed to scrape through anyway. But Babar Azam, that 100, very briefly, do you want to just touch upon that? Because I've talked about it. I did a whole review on it, and I was just so, aggressively like, Babar Azam's amazing, basically being an ultra Pakistan fan. But what did you think of that knock?
Well, again, I don't really think I can really add much more to it. It was one of the best T20I knocks that I've seen in recent memory. It's as simple as that. And when you think of the background behind it, that runner ball 50, which made him come under so much criticism. There was so much flack coming Babar Azam's way on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name the social media platform. There were people saying this is not good enough. And I mentioned this on Asjad's show, Cricket for Us, the fact that to come back, not in the next series, not a couple of series down the line after getting some confidence back in domestic tournaments, but to come back in the very next game and produce a 122, chasing 200 plus and having a strike rate well over, I think it was 170 or 180. It was absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, it was 206.
It was 206.
Yeah.
Oh my word. And that's the thing. People don't associate that kind of striking with Babar Azam. And it wasn't necessarily bludgeoning the ball. He wasn't trying to absolutely leather the covers off of it. It was placement, it was timing, it was precision. And some of the drives and some of the scoop shots that he was producing were just absolutely exceptional. So for me, in terms of Babar Azam, he is one of my favourite players on the planet right now. He's an exceptional batsman. He is one of the greatest alive right now and playing in our wonderful game. And that century just epitomised his sheer class, his sheer talent, and just the demeanour of this guy. The amount of talent that he's got is just staggering. It really is. And he never fails to surprise me. And although, yes, at times the strike rate will be questioned, he can't produce a 50 ball 100 every single day of the week. Of course, that's not really expected of Babar Azam. It's not really realistic. But when he is in that kind of form, I don't really think there are many batsmen better to watch on the entire planet. And for that reason, Babar Azam is an absolute genius. That's all I can describe him as.
Well, I really appreciate that, to be honest with you, on behalf of all the Pakistan fans. But Herschel Gibbs said in a very, very nice way, but I think he's the Karachi Kings coach as well, so maybe he has to say it. But he did say that, and I actually said this in my review, that it was a very complete knock. And again, I'm a little bit biased, but similar to you, I did say that this is one of the best T20 knocks I remember seeing in quite a long time. And the reason why I said it as well is because, as you said, it wasn't bludgeoning. There were some sixes in there. I think it was 4 sixes and 15 fours. There was some big hitting in there, but there was also almost like a Kane Williamson-esque kind of late touches down to third man for 4, really fine. Like there was a Yorker from, I think it was Magala, 140 Ks, and it was on middle stump, and he just backed away to the leg side and just opened the face of the bat, and it just ran off the face of the bat for 4 past the keeper. And I was like, and he actually meant to do it as well, and I was like, whoa, what is going on? And it's almost like he was in this, and it's funny because when I was live streaming it, one of the subscribers said he's in the zone, he's in that kind of state where, you know what, everything is pretty much going to happen, everything's going to go right, everything he tries he'll pull off. And it seemed like he was in that type of form, and he just had everything about it. It was just incredible to watch, and I was thinking to myself, this is class. And if it wasn't for him scoring that 100, I would have been waxing lyrical about Aidan Markram, which we'll get onto later, because I'm a massive fan of how he did in this series, a massive fan of the way he bats. Slightly different to Babar Azam, but very similar also in a lot of ways. And we'll touch upon it in the kind of conventional sense. But he was very good. And Babar Azam, though, I think for me, that knock was just phenomenal. And I have to give mention to Mohammad Rizwan, because poor Mohammad Rizwan was 73 or 47, not out as well. And no one really talked about him because obviously he was, let's say, outdone a little bit by Babar Azam. But yeah, fantastic knock. I guess we've waxed lyrical about Pakistan enough. I think it's now time to get on to a bit of the, let's say, things to work on. I don't want to say negatives because Pakistan won it. So, we won the ODI and T20 series, so I'm happy about that. But in the T20 series, and we'll touch upon this first because you allude to it, is the middle order struggles. Now, Mohammad Hafiz normally at 4 is fantastic. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the last year and a half, 2 years, he's actually been one of the most informed T20 batsmen. I think he actually had the best figures for the last year and a half or so. However, in this series, he wasn't amazing. I think maybe a little bit rusty potentially because he wasn't playing the ODI stuff. He only plays T20 stuff. And look, I'll let him off. And I think he's allowed at least 3 or 4 series before you can even talk about dropping him. So I'll let him off. Haider Ali, on the other hand, he was batting at 5 or 6, or 5 for the most part anyway. Now, he is one of the most frustrating youngsters I've ever seen because on debut, he scored a 50 against England in England at 3. And I'm thinking this 19-year-old is the real deal. And he just has everything. I watched him. I thought he can play all 3 formats. You know, when I said to you about like Van der Dussen before and other players, Conway, for example, he was one that I looked at and I thought he can do it. I still think he can do it. He's only 20 years old, but he seems to just have this mental block. And it seems to almost be the same shot. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like it's always the same shot. It's I want to flick it over mid-wicket for 6. I'm going to back myself, even though there's someone at deep mid-wicket and there's a massive gap either side or in front of him. So I can either just nurdle it into the leg side for a single 2, or I can hit either side and get 4 runs. But no, I'm going to back myself to go for 6 over that man. And he's gone out that way at least 4 or 5 times that I can remember. And it seems to be this mentality of every ball needs to go. Or, you know what, I'm not going quick enough. Oh, it's in a slot. That's it. Let's project it into the stands. What's your views as a neutral on him? And how long do you think Pakistan should give him? Because I think we need to look after him and give him more time. I think he is a finisher we probably need in the team, but it's very hard to back him when he doesn't score any runs. What are your thoughts?
He's an interesting one, isn't he? Because I think we all know, having seen Haider Ali at his best in the PSL for the Peshawar Army, we all know what this guy's capable of. You also alluded to that brilliant knock against England, and you look at that knock and you think, my goodness, this guy's the real deal. He really is. At such a young age, to be able to hit the ball so cleanly and to hit it to multiple areas of the ground, he doesn't just have one scoring area. You do look at him and think, my goodness, this lad's got potential. And he does. And I'm quite a big fan of Haider Ali's game. I think he is one of the brightest talents in Pakistan right now. I'm going to be honest, him, Rahel Nazir as well. Just wanted to give him a mention. No, we didn't see him in this series, but again, someone to watch out for in my personal view. With Haider Ali, it's a really interesting one because when I mentioned about his exploits for Peshawar, when we talk about the 50 against England, the key there is that he's facing balls in the power play. And he's getting that confidence up. There's only 2 fielders outside of the 30-yard circle, and he's got multiple gaps to actually pick. And even if he doesn't get boundaries, he's able to actually manipulate the field a bit better, in my personal opinion. For me right now, I don't see him as a finisher. I'm going to be honest, he's an incredibly, incredibly clean striker of the ball, a bit like you could argue with Sharjeel. But for me, I don't think he can go necessarily from ball 1 in over 16 to 20. I feel like you need him in the top 4. If he's going to play consistently in the team, he needs to be a top 3, top 4 batsman, in my personal view. I know that some people may disagree with that. You could have him at 5 and 6. Just give him that international experience because we know he can hit 6s, could provide some valuable runs to the death. But it's a lot of pressure. And the key thing with Pakistan as well, in a team which has a very, very enigmatic nature. We know Pakistan. On their day, they're absolute world beaters, but sometimes they collapse very, very quickly. Can you afford to have a guy at 5 and 6 who only has one gear, and that gear is go? And we've seen that with Asif Ali as well. It's the exact same concept, and unfortunately, it hasn't worked. So for me personally, as much as I'm a massive fan of Haider Ali, and I can see the arguments for maybe having him at 4 or 5, for example, for the time being, I don't think he is the finisher for Pakistan. I just don't think he has enough experience in that particular position, unless he's going to play that in domestic cricket. But with that being said, keep the guy in the squad, because I really do think he is a future superstar. I'm going to be honest, I have a lot of faith in his ability and his talents when it comes to opening the batting. I just don't see him as a finisher just yet. But Faizan, anything to disagree with me on that? It's completely fine too. That's just my personal 2 cents on that.
It's a really interesting one, actually, because I think, the more you're talking about, the more I was thinking, actually, you've got a point. I actually was of the original thinking that, maybe it's too much pressure for him at 3 or 4 because, and I'll use the example of because I've used this quite a lot. For example, your Michael Clark, Kevin Petersons, when they first started out, they batted lower down. But the difference there, though, is that I'm comparing it, I guess, at different formats because that was an ODIs and Test cricket, which is again is a different ball game. So, and T20s potentially, and what you're alluding to, and actually it does make sense, is to finish off a game. There's a lot of pressure than to just come out and hit. And that does then bring these types of mistakes, I guess, as well. And he loses his shape a little bit. But then also there's the flip side that maybe batting at 3 is a lot of expectation because realistically, you could then expect him to get runs. So I think, and this is going to be quite weird because I'm going to change my thoughts on it, is I think, like you said, I think he should be in the squad. I think maybe he shouldn't be in the starting 11 for the T20s. What I actually think is, and I know he can do it because I think he's got quite good white ball stats in the longer form, is maybe in ODIs we should have him at 5 or 6 because we need someone there anyway. And what that might mean is he might be the finisher, but he won't be a finisher who needs to hit from ball 1, for 4 overs. He'll have probably, no, in Pakistan, he might even have 20 overs, but let's say he has 10 to 15 overs and he comes in, he can take, a few overs, 4 or 5 overs to get going, right? And that might suit him because we need someone in the ODI stuff anyway. And I think that could potentially then help him. And then as he matures, we can then bring him in. And who knows? Because I think the top 4 for us in T20s is pretty much nailed on, I think, now.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to make his way into there. Then it's just, okay, well, 5 and 6. And that's the issue. But it's funny because we're just talking about this. And I'm thinking, Haider Ali was at 5, but we're saying he shouldn't be there. Then it's like, but who comes in? Because 5 and 6, you just don't know now.
That's the problem, though, isn't it, with Pakistan? And we go back to even the Zimbabwe series, for example. You look at all the guys that they're trying. And I think to Asif Ali, of course, who we all know is a brilliant, brilliant striker of a cricket ball. We've seen him do it in the PSL. We've seen it do him in franchise leagues across the world. The CPL, for example, when he was there at times, he was a very, very valuable asset. But the problem is in international cricket, he's striking around about 124. Now, that is not good enough for a finisher. If you compare that to the likes of a Hardik Pandya, to the likes of a Colin de Grandon, for example, an Andre Russell or Kieran Pollard, it pales in significance. So for me personally, that is the Achilles heel of this Pakistan team right now. And to be honest, I don't know how many more options that they actually have because they've tried Hussein Talat, they've tried Danish Aziz, whether or not they'll actually try him a bit more in T20I cricket remains to be seen. Another interesting one, and Faizan, I actually wanted to know your opinion and, of course, the viewers' opinions on this. But one man in particular who hasn't got a Pakistan debut as of yet is Azam Khan. Now, for me, again, he's a young, interesting prospect. He is an interesting one. We know what he's capable of. We've seen it for Quetta. We've seen it in the Sri Lankan Premier League as well. We know that this guy can absolutely muller a cricket ball outside of a stadium. But would you trust him at such a tender age to go straight in? We haven't got many series left before that T20 World Cup, to slot straight in at 5 and 6 and hit the ball right from ball 1. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
It's a really interesting one because it's easy for me to say no, so I will say no. but realistically as well, like a lot of people, a lot of media, I've seen a lot of people, Pakistan fans, saying we should bring him in. And I think the issue, and you've alluded to it, is that he is very young. I think he's quite unrefined as well. And as someone who, again, I'm no expert in batting, but I've done coaching and I've watched it long enough, I've played it long enough, and I know that he is still a work in progress. And I think you throw him in now and it will ruin his career, I think. I think it could go one of 2 ways. Like, he could come in, he could be fantastic and he can learn on the job. Some players are able to do that. I just think because he's been playing a lot of franchise cricket as well, that does help. But I actually see him as being someone who can potentially play both white ball formats. And I think if he's to do that, he needs to, I mean, he's been doing it anyway. He needs to work on his fitness. I think we all know that. And he has done it. He's lost a considerable amount of weight. He's got a lot fitter. He's actually very good in the field if you watch him in the franchises. For someone, well, just in general, to be honest with you, I was quite surprised the way he moves. So clearly he's athletic. He just doesn't have that athletic build. But he's working on that anyway. So that's something that will, again, help him running between the wickets, etc. Because in T20s, it's so vital. But that aside, even, I think, yes, he can hit a clean ball. He can hit a big ball. But I guess similar to Haider Ali, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to come in, especially because that's the area of concern for Pakistan. It's not like you can just sneak him into the team. And it's like, you know what? Don't worry. You've got someone at, for example, if you put him in at 5 or 6, then you can say, well, actually, someone above and below you, if you don't perform, don't worry, they'll do a job. We don't actually have that because we probably need 2 players realistically, because Asif Ali and Haider Ali were playing for Pakistan. And in my opinion, I think Asif Ali is a very good domestic player, but I don't think he should be in the Pakistan squad, if I'm being honest with you. And then it's like, okay, so there's no one at 6. Then Haider Ali we're saying should be in the squad. So you have 5 and 6. So how are you going to do it? Because what it means is then you've got 2 gaps there, 2 weaknesses in the Pakistan lineup. And I think Azam Khan, my thoughts have always been, and I'll stick by it, is he give him another year and a half or so, and then he will be in that side. I think it's probably a little bit too early now. And no disrespect to someone like Zimbabwe, but you could put him in the squad and play against someone like Zimbabwe, give some players a rest, just give him some experience, give him a taste of it against one of the kind of more so-called lower teams, if you want to call them that, and see how he does. If he does really well, like does unbelievably well, then maybe have him in the squad. But I wouldn't say to him, "You're our man." I would just say maybe have a little bit of a taste, see how it goes, and then maybe he can learn from that. But just let him know that this is a taste. We're not going to, there's no pressure for you to be in that side. That's kind of my thoughts on it. It's a bit complicated, but I just think it's a lot on young shoulders, for sure. It really is. And I think he needs more time, more experience. But he's a damn good prospect, that's for sure, as Haider Ali is. It's so funny, we're talking about the middle order, but I think we've got no answers from it. I think this is going to happen anyway, to be honest. 5 or 6, you have no idea.
I would give 1. Okay. I would give 1, and call me incredibly biased because I'm a Jamaica Talawars fan, and I really do rate this
Malik.
guy. Well, it's not Shoaib Malik.
Oh, is it not? Okay.
No. Although, again, a fantastic player, and has been for many years. I like Imad Wasim. I'm going to be honest. And whether we'll see him in that Pakistan T20I team, of course, remains to be seen. But this guy knows how to finish a game. Okay, and I know this isn't T20I cricket, but look back to 2019 with the World Cup at Headingley against Afghanistan, and that knock was absolutely exceptional. And I look at Imad Wasim, and we keep on talking about these young guys coming up. For example, Haider Azam Khan, Rahel Nazir could come into it in the future as well. They are all very, very inexperienced and don't have that match-winning caliber yet. They don't have that pedigree. Whereas Imad Wasim does. This is a guy who can finish off an innings. We've seen it in the PSL for Karachi. We've seen it in the CPL for Jamaica. We've seen it here in England in the T20 Blast for Nottinghamshire. This guy can single-handedly win you a game. And he has been there and done it before. So for me personally, I'd have Imad Wasim. But again, are there too many all-rounders in that team? And that is another question. Do they need another specialist batsman? And that is the big question that Pakistan need to actually answer before the T20 World Cup, in my opinion.
It would be so much easier if I really had a lot of faith in Shadab Khan's batting and Mohammad Nawaz's batting, but unfortunately I don't, and that's the issue, I think, because it looks amazing on paper to have 3 all-rounders in there, or 4 if you've got Fahim Ashraf in there as well.
Technically Hassan Ali. Are we going to count him as an all-rounder now? He can hit sixes.
I'll say he's a bowling all-rounder. He's a bowling all-rounder. But yeah, I mean, Hassan Ali in there is like, he's perfect down the order. Yeah. It's just in between, isn't it? And Imad Wasim, I've said, like, I don't know what it is, what the politics situation is. I think there is some type of politics going on. Although the selection choice of Mohammad Nawaz was, he's a lot tighter with the ball. He gives you better variations, and bowling wise, he's better. That was what the argument was. Although economy wise, if you look at Imad Wasim, I think his economy is 6 in T20 internationals, which is unbelievable. So he's got less wicket taking ability. I think he's taken less than a wicket a game, just under. But how tight he is and with the new ball is very good. But they did cite that his flexibility to, I guess, bowl with an older ball is not fantastic. Now, it's a really interesting one because Mohammad Nawaz bowled really well in this series, really well. But his batting, and it's funny, like you said about Ushtred, and Ushtred is a clear believer that Mohammad Nawaz is a good batsman. I am a clear believer that he's not, to be honest with you, because I've seen him and I know that he bats high up in the domestic leagues. But I think, again, at international level, there's a difference. And again, until he scores runs, until he proves himself, then I'll happily put my hands up. But until that time comes, I'm not going to go on gospel and say, well, because he's done well domestically, you're going to do well internationally. And we know that because you'll know Markram, and it's a very controversial one, but that's the truth. So, yeah, I mean, that's an issue because if he bats, then it's perfect, right? Because you either have him or Imad Wasim, and then you know you're going to get batting, you're going to get bowling, perfect, sorted. But then you got the issue of Shazab Khan as well. Is he going to bat well? So we've got this huge issue, which I guess will be sorted out as the series go on, leading up to the T20 World Cup, I hope, because otherwise we have a massive hole in our T20 team. Something that I did want to touch upon, and because we talked about Mohammad Nawaz, is you're a massive fan of Usman Qadir. I know you are. Now,
yes, correct.
He got a bit of tap and then got dropped. What do you think? What do you think of him going forward? I mean, in India, I'm assuming he's actually going to be quite important because the track's going to be very different come the T20 World Cup. Didn't have a fantastic series, though, from the games he did play. What was your assessment?
Well, yeah, it was underwhelming. That's how I'd describe that from Usman Qadir. But with that being said, he's still relatively new on the international stage. Okay, you're going to have bad games. It's as simple as that. People have bad series now and again. So I don't think it's really fair to judge him, particularly on this series. And in particular, when you think it's South Africa. And actually, if you compare this performance to his ODI performances, it just lets you know just how impressive that ODI series actually was for Usman Qadir. So with him, I don't think it's time to hound him out of the squad. I don't think it's time to lose all patience with him. I think he'll accept that he didn't have a great series. He went at over 10 runs and over, didn't he, I believe, in this particular series against the Proteas. But with that being said, there is definitely potential. We know what he's capable of. And something which I love about Usman Qadir's game is that he just has a knack of picking up wickets. Whether that's with a leg break, a googly, he's got that beautiful flipper as well. Always love seeing a good flipper. So for me, Usman Qadir, if you're a Pakistan fan, don't go hounding him, don't go on his back just yet. Give him more time, and I think he'll come good. Simple as that. He's definitely got raw potential to be good for the men in green.
I agree 100%. 100%. And Hassan Ali, we mentioned his batting. I think that's not an issue. I think we know he can bat a little bit. And the one thing that was a little bit disappointing from him, even though he was the top wicket taker of the series with 7 wickets alongside Williams for South Africa, who was really impressive. We'll get on to him in a little bit as well. Is I thought he was slightly expensive, Hassan Ali. Well, say slightly, he was quite expensive. I think he went for 7 in the first game, which is good. But then he started going, so 8 as well. And you're like, okay, that's not too bad. And then the last 2 went for 11.75 and 10. Now, I know it happens in T20 cricket, but I think there was a little bit of just loose, erratic bowling from him. Something that he needs to tighten up on. What are your thoughts? Am I being a bit too harsh? Because I know he's got wicket-taking ability. Is it just part and parcel of it? Or do you think actually it's something he can improve on?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And ever since the dawn of T20I cricket T20 cricket, I should say, in 2003, you're always going to have that argument between strike rate and economy rate. Which one do you value? Do you value more wickets? Are wickets more valuable in T20 cricket, or is economy? For me, looking at Hassan Ali, I'm going to be honest, you know he's going to be searching for wickets. That's the kind of bowler he is. And if you look at strike rate in this particular series, it was the best out of any bowler, 12. So he's basically taken a wicket once every 2 overs, which is absolutely phenomenal from a Pakistani perspective. So for me, yes, you could argue tighten up the line and length a bit, maybe utilize some different variations instead of just bowling the same old, same old. But with that being said, what his game plan is to take wickets, and he's doing that. So maybe Pakistan fans, in order to get those wickets, it is a little bit of a trade-off, but you may have to make it for the time being in order to make Hassan Ali such a successful bowler. It's just part and parcel, isn't it, of fast bowling, in particular on these grounds as well. I think this has to be said. I know we're talking a lot about economy rates, and a couple of games were maybe a little bit low scoring. But historically, both Centurion and Johannesburg, the Wanderers and Supersport Park respectively, are incredibly high scoring grounds. And we saw that in the third T20I. The par score before those T20I, was 209. So it's expected. They aren't necessarily the most bowler friendly of wickets in the entire world. So for me personally, I don't think Hassan Ali's bowling is a massive concern. But yes, of course, with any bowler, you can always have areas of improvement, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I think something to slightly improve on. But as you said, I think strike rate of 12 is not bad whatsoever.
Not bad at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, let's go on to South Africa then, because that's your adopted team anyway with his shirt on at the moment. So let's
Correct.
go on to Aidan Markram. 3 consecutive 50s, and he was incredible to watch. But I'll let you take it away, and then I'll follow on. What are your thoughts on Aidan Markram?
Aidan Markram, in one word, outstanding. Simple as that. I know there was a lot of talk before this series with regards to South Africa's openers, with Quinton de Kock going to the IPL to play for the Mumbai Indians, and then in the most rotten of luck as well, the most unfortunate twist of fate, the captain, Temba Bavuma, the other half of the dynamic duo, was unfortunately ruled out with injury. So for Aidan Markram, we know what this guy's capable of. You mentioned it beforehand, he is such a classy customer. When he bats and he gets these beautiful drives out that are so crisply struck, so beautifully caressed through the covers, you look at this guy and think he is an absolute joy to watch. And when he's on form, when he's on song, which he was in this series, he's a brilliant batsman to watch. And I think in particular, he really stood out. I'd argue above any South African batsman in this series. I know we'll talk about Janneman Malan, Rassie van der Dusen had his moments, same with Henrik Klaasen as well as the captain. But Aidan Markram's consistency. This is a guy who doesn't play a load of T20I cricket for the Proteas, given that solid dynamic duo of Quinton de Kock and Temba Bavuma. They also have Reza Hendricks coming in. They have Janneman as well, of course. So to come in this series after the back of, let's face it, a bit of an iffy, okay, not the greatest of ODI series, and to perform like that, back to back 50s against the likes of Shaheen Shah Afridi, Haris Rauf, Usman Qadir, who before this series was in good touch, Fahim Ashraf as well. Oh, exceptional. In one word, exceptional. And Aidan Markram from this series, take a bow. Simple as that. It was absolutely magnificent to watch from a Protea standpoint.
He was just, I mean, I was almost in awe of how good he was, to be honest with you. I mean, the first one was at 51 off 32, so a strike rate of nearly 160. Then he just took it up a level. It was 54 off 30, strike rate of 180. And then the third one, it was 63 off 31, a strike rate of over 200. The fourth one, unfortunately, wasn't able to make it 4 50s in a row, but that is what it is. But
Yeah.
he was only usurped by Babar Azam as the top run scorer. So he actually got 179 runs at 45. Babar Azam 210. I think that 100 definitely helped Babar Azam. Let's say that. Otherwise, I think Aidan Markram would have got it pretty comfortably, to be honest with you. But I mean, as you said, and rightfully so, he is a pleasure to watch. And it's funny because I remember we did the ODI series review, and I said that he's in danger potentially of becoming a Red Bull specialist. Now, I was surprised to see him in a T20 side because, as you said, he hasn't played much T20I cricket for South Africa, and I wasn't expecting it to happen. I was expecting potentially Reza Hendricks to be opening with Janneman Malan. They stuck with Markram and said, "Go on, have a go," and he just repaid them immensely with unbelievable hitting. And it's funny because I was doing a live streams and I said, as an opening batsman, if I can just take like 0.1% of his ability, because the way that he bats is almost like how I like to bat. And again, this is not saying that I'm Aidan Markram. It's just saying the style of play that he plays at is how you won't see me play a scoop shot. You won't see me hit a reverse sweep. You won't see me hit anything kind of fancy like that. But you will see me hit strong through the covers or in the V or to the leg side. All those conventional shots that he plays. And it's funny because similar to Babar Azam, which is why I mentioned it earlier, he plays all these shots, but so strongly that he can score at a strike rate of 180 plus consistently whilst playing shots that you might see in an ODI or a test match. And you'll look at the shots that he plays, none of them are slogs, keeps his shape, right? The sixes he's hitting, he hit a couple of sixes over extra cover, unbelievably strong shots. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is incredible to watch. And it's funny because all my viewers were saying, and it just made me think, like, if someone's in this type of form, if he carries on like this, he's got to be in the T20 squad come the World Cup. Now, the issue they have, and it's similar to what we said in the ODIs, now the big issue they have is Quinton de Kock's going to open up. You know that already. That's already half of it done. Now, Janneman Malan would have been my nail on for the T20s. That he would have been, but Markram, for me, has just completely usurped him now. Although Bavuma, I know, does open as well.
So and averages over 50.
Yes, he does. Exactly. So you've got Bavuma, Malan, Markram, Hendricks, and de Kock. So what do you do? And how do you fit any of them in? Can you fit more than two into the side is the question that I'm going to ask you.
Well, that is the big question that we've been talking about on Cricket Fanatics magazine. And for the time being, I don't think you can. I'm going to be honest. Again, with South Africa, you look at their top four. Okay, you've got Quinton de Kock, Temba Bavuma, Rassie van der Dusen. I mean, potentially AB de Villiers. Who knows in the T20 World Cup as well? There's
Yeah,
been a lot
and
of talk about.
Duplessis as well.
Potentially Faf, maybe. We'll have to wait and see with regards to Faf. But again, he's actually not nailed on because that is South Africa's. That's where they have their embarrassment of riches, per se, is in the top order batsman, a bit like Pakistan, a bit like England as well. We have far too many openers for our own good as well in T20I cricket. But for me, I think with Markram, I know he's had an absolutely outstanding series. But again, he's got so much competition. He really has. And I don't think that you can justify taking him to India off the back of one home series. And a big thing with Markram, and it's the same with Yanaman Malan, and we saw it times in this series, is not an inability to play spin, but it's a lack of confidence against spin. And something which both of them have tried to do is get forward to spin. We saw that a lot better in this series from both guys. But would you trust those two to partner a Quinton de Kock or a Temba Bavuma in the subcontinent against some of the best spinners in the world? And in my opinion, right now, I'm not sure whether or not the South Africans actually would. I feel like Quinton de Kock, Temba Bavuma, I mean, in all honesty, have actually nailed their places on. Temba's been fantastic. He's the captain. He opens for the Lions in domestic cricket. Quinton de Kock, we all know what he's capable of. He was one of the leading run scorers in the IPL. He's had a decent start as well to this year's tournament and is probably South Africa's most talented batsman in terms of just raw batting ability. So for me, I'd open with those two. And then in terms of the squad, I have to say Yanaman's going. I think he'll make it into the squad. Markram's an interesting one because Markram, again, he reminds me very much of James Vince. And it's funny the fact that they both played for Hampshire in county cricket because when they're at their best, they're some of the best looking and most aesthetically pleasing batsmen on the entire planet. But the problem is, it never seems to carry over from series to series. It's one good series here, then a bit of a blip, then one good series here, and etc. etc. The vicious cycle carries on. So for me with Markram, maybe have him in the squad, but as a nailed on opener alongside either Quinton or Temba, I just think it's a bridge too far, to be honest, ahead of the T20 World Cup this year. Who knows in the future, though?
Interesting to see how that shapes up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Temba Bavuma is an interesting one, isn't he? Because I think he's only played 80 internationals. Hasn't scored a 50 yet, but he averages 36. But I think you were saying maybe opening up he averages 50. So
he does, yeah.
Yeah, so which is interesting. Obviously, a couple of not outs. Then he's a damn good player, Temba Bavuma, for sure. I was more thinking, can he go down to 3 maybe because he doesn't know ODIs? I don't know. But if he's doing that well opening up and he's the captain, you're just going to keep him there, aren't you? So it's, I guess, who you have in the squad, which is interesting. And you mentioned it, so I'm going to ask you about it. AB de Villiers coming back into the side. They're talking about it. Now, you're an RCB fan, so I'm assuming you're gonna be big on it. But, you know, as a, 37-year-old, and look,
Age is just a number, Faisal. Age is
no,
just
it
a
is,
number.
it
Look
is,
at Mohammad
it is.
Hafiz.
It is. You're right. You're right. And when I say he's 37, it's more thinking about how many years he's been retired. And it's funny because one of my friends said to me, he was quite angry about it, actually. He said, look, isn't it a bit unfair that they bring someone in who hasn't played any South African cricket, as in for South Africa, just into the T20 World Cup when you've had people like whoever it might be, Van der Dussen or whoever else might make way, Klaassen, they've been grinding away for South Africa, not going to these franchise tournaments, and or they haven't got picked up, whatever else it might be, and they get usurped by someone who says, you know what, I fancy it. I kind of get that point. I also get the point that AB de Villiers is an incredible player. What do you think? Because I saw Chris Gale say, I want to be in the T20 World Cup. So then he said, actually, I'll play the Sri Lanka series. So he left the PSL early, and I thought, you know what, good on you. Like, that's fair enough. Because if you want to play the T20 World Cup, then you've got to at least play a few games for West Indies beforehand to show, you know what, I'm committed to the cause. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, again, I think Chris Gale is a fantastic example. And we look at him in the 2019 World Cup, for example. And for West Indies fans, they may have had the exact same feelings. Well, why is Chris Gale coming back into the squad? Why not giving it to Evan Lewis? Why not giving it to Brandon King, for example? Or Andre Fletcher, Johnson Charles, even? These guys who have been opening the batting in bilateral series. So for me, South Africa have a question, okay? And South African fans have a question to answer as well. Do you want to pick a team based on fairness? Okay, so guys like Klaassen, Van der Dusen, I think, is a nail on, to be honest. He's a brilliant T20I batsman. But do you want to select someone who, in these bilateral series, which bear in mind South Africa have not won a single T20I bilateral series since 2019 against Sri Lanka? They haven't won any of their last 6 tournaments now in bilateral series. Do you give one of those guys a go, or do you put in one of the greatest T20 batsmen of all time who is in the form of his life? And that is the big question. That is something which the West Indies did in 2019 with Gale, and that is if, well, I think Boucher, I'm going to be honest, having read interviews, having seen his press conferences as well, I feel like he is very, very much in favour of it. I'm going to be honest. And even though he hasn't been playing in these bilateral series, something which I hope AB would do, if he was to come back, of course, this is all speculation for the time being, would be to play in the West Indies series, or would be playing in another bilateral series later down the line. As you mentioned with Gale, showing that he is properly invested in this team, build up a bit of chemistry, build up a bit of camaraderie within the actual setup itself, and then play at the World Cup, just to make it a bit fairer. But in terms of the whole debate, of course it is up to AB. But if he says yes, I will return for South Africa for one last hurrah in India, a continent which I've absolutely dominated in their domestic league since 2011, you've got to take up the offer. It's as simple as that. If this was England, for example, and it was a Ben Stokes or Joss Butler who'd done the exact same thing, let's say they haven't been playing in the T20 Blast, for example, which those guys haven't for ages, and then they suddenly come back and say, right, we're available for this World Cup, you'd take them. It's as simple as that. A guy like AB de Villiers is a generational talent. He's not just a good player who's in form, he is one of the greatest to ever do it, and he's still producing the goods at the age of 37. So for me, if he comes back, no brainer. South Africa have to select him, even if it is deemed as a bit unfair on other players in that starting lineup.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's like the Jofra Archer thing where he just came in for David Willey and there was that whole kind of scenario there. But yeah, I think AB Willey is an interesting one, but I agree a little bit of commitment needs to be shown as well. I'm sure he would if he was. I think he actually said, I don't know if I'm misquoting, but they asked him about it and he said absolutely, like I'd be up for it. So I think he's made himself available. It's just, and Mark Boucher is an ex-teammate, so I'm assuming they get on well.
Yeah.
A bit of nepotism there, but doesn't, well, say nepotism, but he is an incredible player. So it's, as you said, generational talent is definitely the right thing to say. And I think going forward as well for him, I mean, if he does well at this World Cup, it's back-to-back World Cups and T20s. Mm-hmm. So I know it's in Australia, it's different conditions, but he could be that good. Well, he is that good, so that I'm sure he would do pretty well there as well. On the bowling side of things, then very briefly as well. So Williams, he was a joint top wicket taker. Mm-hmm. I thought he was really impressive, able to swing the ball both ways. He was swinging a 17-year-old ball, white ball, and quite a bit. And I was thinking, what is this? This is crazy. This guy, he looks very confident. A lot of my subscribers were saying, you know what, he looks like he's got something about him. Got to have him on the side. The only person that I can see making way for him would be someone like Ngidi, who's very good anyway, as well. I think Rabada and Nortje, they're nailed on. And then you've got your rounders in there as well. What are your thoughts on Williams? And do you think he can make his way into the 11 or squad even?
Again, I am going to be slightly biased. I'm a Titans fan, for those who don't know, in South African cricket, and Lizard does play for the Men in Blue, or I should say played, because they're no longer actually a franchise in South Africa. But yeah, he is an incredibly, incredibly bright prospect. It's as simple as that. He had a fantastic T20 challenge, which is South Africa's premier domestic tournament. And he just conveyed those good performances, the confidence, the assurance in his own game, his composure at the death. And he transferred those skills directly onto arguably the biggest stage of them all, which is international cricket. So for me, incredibly impressed with Lizard. His line and length was spot on. You mentioned about the ability to swing. His wrist position. I would love to see young bowlers actually just look at his wrists because they're absolutely impeccable. It's as simple as that. He does get some lovely natural movement, even with an old white ball. And then at the death as well, something which I really like from Lizard was almost this relentless effort of pursuit of the Yorker, which is something which I feel like at times in T20 cricket, some bowlers are looking away from. They're going in favour of slower balls, cutters, knuckleballs, for example. But Lizard was keeping it so simple, just straight to the plan. And even if it ended in a full toss, I appreciate the fact that at least he was trying. He was trying to execute a Yorker and trying to stifle the runs. So for me, in terms of a Proteus perspective, Lizard Williams, massive tick next to his name, really bright prospect. In terms of him playing directly in the World Cup, again, it's going to be difficult. I'm going to be honest. You mentioned there 3 quality bowlers, all of which are playing in the IPL as we speak. You've got a guy like Ondile Pethalakwayo, who, to be fair, has not been in the greatest of forms, but technically does have a bit more batting behind his back. So, again, it's going to be difficult for Lizard. But in terms of the 22, so you've got a 15-man squad and then 7 reserves who are injury reserves to be called up on. I think he should be in there. I'm going to be honest. I think he's earned his place. He's been brilliant in domestic cricket. He's looked very, very promising. Give him another couple of series, and I think he'll really make a solid, solid challenge for that Proteas team.
I agree. He looks like a really good talent, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him, to be honest with you. The other bowler who I hadn't seen before is Magala. Stocky fellow, bowls a very heavy ball, and I'm sure you're very familiar with him. A bit of a mixed bag, very expensive. I think he went for the most runs ever from a debut first over. I think it was 20 off the first over. Felt quite bad for him, actually, to be honest with you. But then he pulled out some big guns in that win in the second T20 where he bowled really well. And then it came down to the 4T20, and he was bowling really well. He only went for eight and over in the end, but it was that penultimate over where he gifted us 10 runs with a wide, a no ball, a free hit, and then I went for 6. And I was thinking, thank you very much, because I think we needed 16 off the last 2, and I was about to have a heart attack. But he gave us 10 runs, which was fantastic, and we won on the last ball, but it's fine. We only needed 6 off the last. What are your thoughts on Magala? I mean, I don't think he's going to be in contention for the T20 squad. I could be wrong going forward, but what are your thoughts on him as a talent, I guess, going forward as a prospect?
I'm going to be honest, I don't think you can actually judge him on this series. Okay, for those who have just seen Magala for the first time, you may look at him and be slightly unimpressed. I'm going to be honest, it wasn't his greatest series, but something which he showed in absolute bucket loads in this series was his resilience and mental fortitude. You mentioned there he was so expensive in his first couple of overs, but the way in which he brought it back at the death was admirable. Again, just sticking to what he knows best at the death, utilising those talents, learning those skills. I thought he was absolutely brilliant at times. I really do. I don't think he had an outstanding series. I still think he was pretty poor and expensive at times as well. But again, it's his first series. It's as simple as that. I feel like nerves definitely got the better of him at times. But in terms of as a prospect, this guy's been so consistent. And for so many years, Proteas fans and South African domestic cricket fans have wanted him in the side. He constantly racks up loads of wickets in domestic cricket. I mentioned about the T20 Challenge earlier. Milan was the leading run scorer. Sitanda Magala was by far and above the leading wicket taker. Absolutely brilliant for the Lions. So for me, Magala, don't judge him on this series. But if you're the Proteas, keep him on the radar. Fair enough, again, is he up there with the likes of Ngidi, Rabada Norkir? Not yet. I'm going to be honest, and I say that as a fan of his game. But in terms of as the potential of the guy, he's got it. He's got the mental skills, he's got the talent, and he has the self-belief in his game. So for me personally, when you actually, accumulate all 3 of those factors, he's got what it takes to succeed on the international stage. I just feel like it's going to take a bit more time with Magala as to, a brand new superstar, an immediate superstar per se, an immediate talent bursting onto the scene, such as Lizard Williams. But yeah, definitely keep the faith in Magala. He's a very, very good bowler.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really helpful, actually. I will keep an eye out for him. I'm sure he'll bounce back. And yeah, you definitely saw spurts of it, I think, from him for sure throughout the series. He seems like he's got a little bit of pace about him, bowls a heavy ball, and has that little bit about him that maybe people saw in Williams, but maybe wasn't as consistent, which is why people thought, oh, hold on, thank you very much for that. You're man of the match in the 40-20 because he gave us all the runs. I guess the last thing to touch upon for South Africa is, they had a little bit of a weak batting lineup. That's because clearly some players were at the IPL, and I don't think it'll be an issue when the players come back, David Miller, etc., coming in. However, in that 40-20, they chose to go with Mulder at 6 as an all-rounder. Now, I thought that was a very, very long tail. I know Mulder can bat, but still, an all-rounder at 6 in Mulder, I thought was not great from their part. And there was a question mark, I think, after the first T20, people were saying you've got to put Renner in there after he performed so well in the third ODI. And he looks like a very, very, very talented player. And I say this only having watched him once, but he looks very, very good. And Boucher said apparently the reason why he's not in the side and isn't getting picked is because he's the backup wicketkeeper and that's it. Now, I thought that was a bit harsh, and I thought that was pretty outrageous thing to say, to be honest with you. And I'm sure Renner probably won't mind it, or he'll just brush over it potentially. But if I was him, I would be like, what? I've just scored runs in the third ODI, look really good, and I'm a talented player. Give me a chance with the bat. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, I'm assuming you think he should have had a chance. And what do you think about his future going forward?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And in terms of Kyle, he wouldn't have reacted that badly. Okay, I've had the pleasure of speaking to Kyle on numerous occasions. He's a wonderful guy. It's as simple as that. And he loves his cricket, loves South Africa, will do absolutely anything winning that Proteas shirt. So I don't think it'll affect him at all. But in terms of that for an excuse, I mean, it's pretty pathetic. I'm going to be honest. You've got one of the best talents in South African cricket right now who is in form. And to say that he's just the backup wicketkeeper, that's it. That's his role. And I think another thing that was said in the press conference was that they don't look at ODI form as well, which is just staggering. Okay, I know it's not the same format, but Kyle, I know he didn't have the greatest of T20 domestic challenges, and that's what they actually said as to why they didn't pick him as well. But how can you not pick this guy who is a bona fide match winner, someone who has runs behind him in the last series and can win you games? It's as simple as that. He is such a classy, composed, and again, a resilient batsman. He's someone who can just anchor and stabilise an innings when the Proteas are in trouble. We've seen that in ODI cricket. And at times as well, this is another thing which I don't think the coaching staff and selectors really looked at. When you look at Kyle, and you can look at his averages in red ball cricket and white ball cricket, they're brilliant. It's as simple as that. But at times they do drop, and you have to realise that's because of the actual match situation. He's batting a lot of times to save a game. It's as simple as that. So if you look at him purely based off stats, you don't get the full picture. And that's something which I think was incredibly short sighted from the Proteas in this series. Because looking at him, he's such a composed, assured batsman. He's got lots of raw potential, plenty of batting skill. We've seen him pick apart Australia. We saw him pick apart Pakistan as well in the ODI series. And to not play him when you're not playing Pipe Van Billion, for example, when you're playing Will Mulder at 6, when you've literally got a gap in that batting lineup which is screaming out for a reliable number 6, well, it's criminal. It's as simple as that. Really, really poor selection. And this was actually said throughout the series by us here on Cricket Fanatics magazine, also on the broadcast as well. I believe it was Mike Haseman said it was absolutely ludicrous or something like that. He used a very, very strong term, I must admit, or baffling or bamboozling, something like that. But yeah, that was really, really confusing. And for me, really, really poor from the Proteas. Something which they should have utilised because you look at that tail and it was so, so long. So long. I mean, Mulder can bat, don't get me wrong, but he's a number 7, potentially a number 8 in T20 cricket, not in ODI cricket or Test cricket. But in T20I cricket, he's nowhere near as assured a finisher as Carver Rayner is. So, in my opinion, really, really bad. Probably the worst decision of the entire series from Proteas' perspective, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he kind of definitely raised eyebrows, and you're right. Mike Hazel went pretty ballistic on the comms, and look, fair enough. I think he said something which is a pretty bold thing, but he said he thinks that Verona is one of the best talents globally, not just for South Africa, but kind of as a prospect. And he said he's an unbelievable talent. And he just said I can't understand it, and yeah, he was not happy whatsoever. I think, especially in the 4T20, because they, as you said, put Mulder at 6, and I was thinking this is a really long tail, and they utilized 7 bowlers, and I thought that was overkill to honestly to have 7 bowlers, and they didn't need to. But yeah, anyways, I think looks a very, very good talent. Hopefully, we see more of him coming forward or going forward even for the rest of the year as well, leading up to T20 World Cup. To finish off, then, I want to just get your thoughts overall on the series. Then, so what was your moment? Do you think of the series?
Well, for me personally, and I say this as an incredibly unbiased Babar Azam fan, but definitely that century. I already mentioned it. It was absolutely incredible. It's as simple as that. To come back from a 49 ball 50, all of the criticism, all of the flack, all of the fire on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc., and to produce that knock and to chase down 200 something runs with 10 or 12 balls to spare was just ridiculous in itself. So for me, moment of the series, and one which I don't think many Pakistan fans, South Africa fans, and neutral fans such as myself will forget for a long time, is that image of Babar Azam hitting his century, kissing the Pakistan badge on the helmet, and raising the bat for a well-deserved century.
Yeah, I agree. The emotion on his face, it was just. I think he almost like screamed. He almost screamed a little bit in kind of just glee. And it's funny because you said it was a 49 ball 50. His 100 came in 49 balls as well. So the next match, which is incredible. And he,
Coincidence, that isn't it?
yeah, he probably did on. It's like he did on purpose. No, I'm joking, but he's yeah, it was just incredible knock as we said previously, and I was just really happy for him because I think he got a lot of stick around it, and yeah, unbelievable that we got that score with, as you said, yeah, 2 overs to spare. It was just unbelievable, and it's one of the easiest chases I've ever seen Pakistan get. It was the highest ever chase from Pakistan. Previously, it was in the first T20, which was 189, I want to say, I think it was, and chasing 204 it was, and in that match was so impressive. I thought from us. I know the past score at Supersport Park is 209 for a first innings, so fair enough. But even then, that being said, for Pakistan to chase anything over 200 is a miracle, to be honest with you, and it's the first time we'd ever done it anyway. So that was really impressive, and I didn't have a heart attack at any point in that match. Of course, we had to then in the 40-20 make it really close, trying to chase 140, but that is what it is. In terms of your batsman in the series, who do you go with?
Oh, that's an interesting one. That is a very, very interesting one. I think in terms of consistency, and because I don't think anybody, myself included, expected it, I'd actually say Aiden Markram. Because of the consistency, back-to-back 50s against a good Pakistan seam attack, I think was brilliant. So I personally go Aiden Markram, but at the same time, I can definitely see why people would go Babar, even if it's just for that knock. I think it's definitely between those two, from my view at least, Faizan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Babar Azam maybe just because he's away from home, but Markram, I think that probably the level of attack that he faced was a lot better probably than South Africa's, given the omissions, people missing as well. So yeah, I'm happy to go. I'm happy to agree with that. I think Aiden Markram has just looked unbelievable, very consistent, and Babar Azam, I think that definitely was the knock of the series for sure. I think he did get Player of the Series as well, and I can see why. But I agree with you in terms of the level of consistency, and maybe if you look at it from more a contextual point of view, and look at how he did against your Shaheen Afridis, your Hassan Alis, your Mohammad Nawazes, etc. And the fact, I think, if we take it from a context point of view, as you said, you weren't really expecting it. He's not really seen as a T20 player, and it was a massive surprise as well. I think I'm happy to say that. Yeah, I think Aiden Markram deserves it. And bowler of the series.
Again, I'm going to choose a South Africa player, and it seems like I'm being incredibly biased here, but purely because, again, I don't think many people would have expected it. I'm going to choose Lizard Williams. Simple as that. I feel like, again, South Africa's bowling attack in this series was a bit indifferent, but Lizard Williams against a very, very strong top order in Pakistan, I think he really held his own. So for me, for him to take 7 wickets, decent economy as well. I know it's hovering around 9, but again, it was a very high scoring series on 2 absolutely brilliant batting venues. I would choose Lizard Williams, but even though I have chosen 2 South Africans as my bowler and batsman respectively, I would just want to say congratulations to Pakistan, because throughout this series, they did play some fantastic cricket. And another thing as well about Pakistan, I felt at times their fielding was massively improved as well. So again, some more positives to take away for the men in green, and thorough deserving winners of this series, in my particular opinion.
No, I agree with you. I was actually going to go Lizard Williams as well. I thought he was really impressive, and I think he was slightly cheaper than Hassan Ali as well in terms of economy. But I was just really impressed with the way he managed to swing the ball both ways, and he definitely have something about him. And I think the way he stepped up to the plate and almost was the leading kind of spearhead for South Africa with all the emissions. That's how it came across to me anyway. I thought was mighty impressive bowling at the death as well. So he was really good. But just to appease everyone, I will say Babar Azam was player of the series rather than batsman of the series. But that's just because we won as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I think happy as a Pakistan fan. I think yeah, of course, it's not ideal the fact that South Africa didn't have all their players, but what can you do? You can only play who's in front of you.
Correct.
And look, we won the ODI series. I know it was 1-1 when the players left, but I'll just back ourselves. We would have won. I think we would have won that one anyways. But good to get 2 series wins at one of the center countries, as we like to say, in Pakistan and India as well. And that's good. And hopefully we can continue the form. I think I had actually an Indian fan say, Pakistan, I think this when we chased the 200, they said, I think they got even more carried away than me. I think they said, you know what, if you guys don't, capitalize on this and make yourselves into like a superpower in cricket, and really kind of capitalize on this to dominate and make a dominant team, then it will be a waste. And yeah, I think we'll see. But as a neutral, actually, I wanted to get your very, very briefly your views on it before we wrap up. I know, again, look, I don't want to get too carried away. Yes, we've won some series, but we've beaten South Africa home and away. And we've also, I think, look, the last time we lost was in New Zealand, which was pretty much a thrashing, if I'm being honest with you. But we've been South Africa home and away. We're going to go into this summer as well, coming here into England, see how we do here. What do you think for Pakistan's prospects, I think, going forward then leading up to the T20 World Cup?
It's an interesting one. And again, one of the things that makes me love and respect Pakistan cricket so much, really, is the fact that they're so unpredictable. But then again, that does make them incredibly entertaining as a neutral fan. But then again, it makes it ridiculously difficult to actually predict anything that involves Pakistan. And this team, unfortunately, are exactly the same. When they're brilliant, they're one of the best to watch in the world. When they have an off day, again, they're towards probably the lower tiers of international cricket as well. There's not really an in-between when it comes to Pakistan cricket. So brilliant to watch, but really hard to predict. In terms of this year's World Cup, I feel like if the jigsaw pieces do actually fall into place, I reckon definitely semi-final challengers. And who knows from there on out, who knows? When it comes to knockouts, pressures, anything can happen. And that's the beauty of T20 cricket. All it needs is one big knock. We saw that with Babar Azam in the third T20I. It can change the complexion of an entire game and an entire tournament. So for me, I definitely don't think they're going to be out and out favourites because of that unpredictable nature. But I hope that they do well. I really do. Pakistan always seem to produce some fantastic T20 players, good seamers, good top order as well. I think they should do quite well, in my opinion. Definitely better than the 2019 World Cup, in my particular view.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah, thank you very much, Aaron, for being on. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. And as you said, I think the sun is shining here, which is good. So, and you've got a lot of cricket to cover. So, good luck with all of that. It's almost lucky in a way I'm not doing the IPL. I don't think I'll be able to cope, to be honest with you. So, good luck with all of that. And of course, guys, catch Aaron also on the County Cricket Podcast, and also follow him on Instagram as well. I'll put the details in as always. Thank you again, and yeah, have a fantastic rest of the day. And hopefully, Warwickshire don't do too well, because then next time I speak to you, then I might have to hear it again, and hopefully do a lot better.
But we're playing Essex next, so it might be a bit more difficult, but
yeah,
fingers crossed for the boys.
That'll be a hard one. Dan Lawrence bowling really well on the April pitch, making the ball turn, which is unbelievable. If you told me that, I would have said, what's going on? Anyways, enough of that. Thanks very much, Aaron. Have a good one, mate.
Cheers. You too as well, Faizan. Always a pleasure.